You guys wanted to find sustainable happiness? Yes, me too. So today we're going to talk about happiness and how happiness is a choice, and the science of happiness is validating wisdom about happiness that has been taught to sincere seekers in the yoga tradition for thousands of years. So no matter what your circumstances or trait or dispositions, happiness is something that you can choose. And our speaker today is Prahlada, who has been, and his wife, Srigandarika, have been staying with us for the past month at Bhakti Center. And we're so fortunate to have them. He is currently living in the UK, but he actually was born into this practice of Krishna consciousness, this practice of Bhakti Yoga. And he actually attended ashrams in Australia and India throughout his entire life. And so he's been studying kirtan and the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga his entire life. And when he was 12 years old, he actually led a campaign to free Christian devotees that were persecuted in the USSR. And he recorded a song actually requesting Gorbachev to free the Soviet Hare Krishnas from religious persecution. And he was successful. He made an album titled Through the Eyes of a Child. And that made the prime minister deliver a letter from Prahlada to the Soviet president, Michael Gorbachev, and within days, a Fox visit to Krishna devotees. So that's a really amazing thing that he did. And then from age 15 onwards for 18 years, he traveled with Indrajumna Swami, who was a teacher in our lineage. And he was basically his assistant, his secretary, his lead kirtan singer. So he got a lot of amazing training. And then he studied communication and psychology. He was awarded a scholarship to undertake a PhD on compassion in organizations in Sydney. He's published, I could go on and on, but he's published dozens of research papers and here in academic journals. And he's also taught Bhagavad Gita. He's teaching and researching at university. And then when he's not doing that, he's basically starting Bhakti communities around the globe and performing kirtan in both traditional and contemporary styles in front of audiences of tens of thousands, including on the Polish Woodstock Festival with Indrajumna Swami. He's been featured in multiple books, and since 2020, he's been most of his free time in Cyprus, where he's helped to form a Bhakti community. So we're extremely fortunate to have him with us today. And that was like a very brief version of his bio. Could say so much more, but I'll hand it over to you, Prahlada.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you today and to spend some time discussing bhakti and discussing happiness and sustainable happiness, specifically happiness as a choice. So we'll talk about what happiness is. We'll talk about strategies for achieving happiness, and we'll look at some strategies that may be more effective than others. And we'll be considering these questions both from the perspective of science, psychology, as well as from the yoga bhakti tradition as well. So first, I guess it's important for us to define our topic, right? What is happiness? What is this thing that we are discussing today? And I would like to hear your thoughts on this topic, because when Champak asked who is interested in happiness, we all raised our hands. And so what is this thing, happiness, that we are all interested in? Some reflection, some thoughts. And don't be shy here. This is a discussion among friends. The Bhakti Center is a safe space. The people here are the most wonderful, kind, compassionate, supportive people I have ever met. And so don't be shy. The more we can engage, the deeper we can go, the deeper our learning as well. So, some thoughts. What is happiness? Yes. Deep inner fulfillment. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Deep inner fulfillment. Happiness is deep inner fulfillment. That's a deep response. thoughts?
Joy.
Joy. Joy. Just sort of less deep, something quite expressive, and it can be drawn from a deep place, but it has an external symptoms, right? When we want to indicate joyfulness, when we want to depict it, there are sort of ways that we depict it. There's a smile, there's brightness in the face, there's this sort of posture that communicates that expression of joyfulness. Very good. So we have some quite different type responses. One kind of a deeper inner state of satisfaction and fulfillment, more like a tranquil, closed eyes, yogi type idea of what happiness might be, and then an expressive, maybe external, but although possibly drawing from an internal place. Some other ideas around what happiness is.
Natural state that we are comfortable with.
A natural state that we are comfortable in. Good, yeah. A natural state that we are comfortable in. And why I like that response is that it could speak to this idea of something that's sustainable. If it's natural and there's comfort, then possibly we could sustain it as well, as opposed to like some kind of extreme activity. So Champak said, I'm from Australia, New Zealand, half my family are in New Zealand, half my family are in Australia. And most of my family is sitting over there, that's Sri Gandarika. So in New Zealand, they like extreme sport, bungee jumping and skydiving and mountain, cliff climbing. I'm sure in America, that's a pursuit as well. And so you do it for a thrill, right? There's an idea, we get a thrill jumping out of a plane and, not knowing quite whether being confident the parachute will open, but it's still uncertain. And so there's a certain thrill to that extreme experience, but it's not sustainable. You do that for a few seconds, you skydive, and then it's over very quickly. And then you just, oh, that was fun. It was. There was a thrill there, but not sustainable, right? So, yeah, but you're talking about something that's natural, comfortable, and sustainable. Some other ideas around what happiness is. Okay, so this is a negative answer, a negative description. It's what it's not. It's not stress, and it's not anxiety. It's when those things are taken away. What we're left with would be happiness, state of peace, I would say. Yeah, that tranquility as a negative descriptor. Yes?
Inner connection that's not dependent on external circumstances.
Okay. Yeah, an inner connection that is not dependent or independent of external circumstances. And why this is an interesting response is because most of the time, most of us will be doing things around our external environment to try to increase our happiness. So that's an interesting idea, that if happiness is independent of the external circumstances, what are we doing? What are we doing with the ice cream, or what are we doing? Spending money on the movie, or changing location to a more affluent neighborhood, and spending a lot of money to upgrade our computer or car or iPhone or whatever it is. If happiness is something that's independent, why are we investing so much time, energy, money, resources in these externals? So that's an interesting question, isn't it? Any other thoughts?
Build upon my friends over here.
Yeah,
I think
of course.
just listening to that.
Yeah, that's the idea. We spark each other's insights.
Definitely think it's a inner state of being that comes from contentment and comfortable with who you are. but is expressed as joy. And the way I see it is like you walk on the road and you're smiling for no reason. You're smiling, you see people, you smile.
Yeah.
You see kids playing, and there's a certain kind of joy and happiness over there. And I think a permanence of that state of being, independent of what is happening to you or what goes around you, I think that's how I would define happiness.
So here we have a synthesizer. Thank you very much. You're taking all of these ideas and integrated them into a bigger picture of what happiness can be, and in a state that's natural, sustainable, independent, expressed as we interact and engage with others and the world. So I guess one thing that we can take from this initial discussion is that happiness is very broad, and there are different ways of conceptualizing happiness, of approaching happiness. It is expressed differently. We can think of happiness as pleasure, your ice cream and your movie, and so those external things that are fleeting. We can think of happiness also as some type of engagement. You're interacting with others, you're smiling, you're comforting, you're appreciating, you're grateful, you're forgiving. So it's engaged, but then it's also deep as well. And it's drawing from something inside. And in the yoga tradition, we would say it's the Atman, it's the self of the soul. So connection, yoga connection with self. So we can talk about all of these different ideas as we try to unpack. And what my goal for today is that when we finish, when we walk out of here, you'll have some practical insights that you can, maybe it reaffirms what you're already doing, what you're already applying. And maybe you'll get some new strategies as well, some new ideas that you can apply. And so in the next hour together, my goal for us is that we walk out of here with some practical tools. You can add to a toolbox. It's a metaphor, but you can add to your strategies for cultivating, or let's say maybe, for experiencing happiness, because there's a paradox that we will discuss as well in terms of the pursuit of happiness. But you will walk out of here today and you will be edified with some practical, applicable tools that you can start applying today, and maybe even in the process of our discussion, you'll start to be changed and you'll start to apply these tools because you'll have a shift in understanding, in mindset, and so even without trying, although to sustain it, there should be some kind of commitment. So that's my goal. We can see if at the end you feel that that's been achieved, and if not, ask questions, and then we can pursue further so that we can arrive at that point. So we've considered what happiness is. Let's consider some strategies, some ways of approaching happiness. And I want to start with the circumstances, although Champak has discounted them in the definition of happiness that is independent of circumstances. I think it's still nonetheless helpful to discuss common approaches and consider their veracity, consider their effectiveness, their strength. And then we will move on to the independent strategies that relate more to consciousness. So some strategies around circumstance, maybe we'll defeat them, not defeat them, but deflate them throughout, that they have some place, and so it should be considered. But as the overall strategy, they are quite limited in terms of sustainable happiness. And then we'll move to another approach of consciousness. So, circumstances. Most of us in our society, in our time, invest most of our energy in the pursuit of happiness through a pursuit of things. And we have this idea that the more things and the better the quality of things that we have, the happier we will be. And to get things, we need money, right? So we spend a big portion of our lives getting money that then can enable us to purchase things. And the interesting, so yeah, bigger house, bigger car, better location. The interesting thing is that researchers in the Gallup organization have been asking people over decades, how happy are you? It's a simple question. Tell us how happy you are. And at the same time, over the same period, the average wage has it's almost tripled. Yeah. So in the past 50 years, the average wage has more than tripled. What would we expect with that? More money, more things, more happiness, right? Makes sense, logical. And the Gallup, so then over the same period, the Gallup organization has been asking people, how happy are you in the United States? We would expect a equivalent trajectory increase as people's wages have increased. Happiness might have increased as well. Is that logical? It's logical. Does it hold? No. So you're already anticipating the answer here. So what do you think has happened to people's happiness over the past 50 years in the United States of America? On average, yeah, with the Gallup organization asking that question. What do you think has been the trajectory? It's gone down?
I think there's correlation up to a certain point, and then it flattens out up to $70,000, I think.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we can, okay, good. In terms of the generalization, so in terms of the average, basically people answer the question the same way. They've answered the question over the past 50 years, how happy are you? For the most part, it's a flat line. There are periods when it dips down, there are periods where it lifts up a little, but averaged out, it's a flat line. So wages have increased, our houses are bigger, we have internet, we have iPhones, we have Amazon, we have Google, we have lots and lots, I mean, the world has changed so much in 50 years. So much more convenience in terms of what we can do and how quickly we can do them and how accessible things are to us in ways that our parents and grandparents could not even imagine. And you would hope, with all of that technological advance, we should be happier, right? And there we are, it's a flat line. And so this would suggest to us that the external circumstances don't have a strong bearing on our overall happiness. Now, what was her name again? Aditya, yeah. Aditya has said, well, it kind of does correlate. There is a correlation up to about $70,000. So that's an interesting insight. More money does equal more happiness. So this is the finer grained detail, right? More money does equal more happiness, but only up to a certain point. And after that, more money doesn't have any impact whatsoever. So what's that certain point? You said $70,000. It actually depends where you are and how much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what the purchasing power
Agreed.
of that money is. Essentially, once you have taken care of shelter, yeah, the basic necessities, food, shelter, clothing. If you don't have food, shelter, clothing, you're on the street. Some money will make a big impact on your happiness. You can get yourself a roof over your head, you can get some clothes on your back, some food in your belly. You will be happier, no doubt. Once those basic needs are met, you can make the house bigger and the food plate larger or more opulent, and it doesn't have that much effect.
It's fleeting.
It's very fleeting.
Yeah, it doesn't last.
Right. Right. So the new car, Freedom Darvikana, we bought a new car some time ago. For a week, we were quite excited.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like the old car.
Next.
We bought a soda machine. So, you know, you take the water and a little syrup and then you make bubbles, and that was pretty exciting. We were pretty happy with that for a week, two. And then it went into the cupboard. And I don't know what happened to it. What happened to our soda machine? Who knows? So it's fleeting, right?
Yes.
It's fleeting.
Happiness comes from within. I believe. The more you like yourself, you're comfortable with yourself, happiness comes.
So you said you're talking about comfort. Yeah, comfort with self. Sure.
Definitely.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've spoken about money. What are some other like external type circumstantial things that we could consider?
Relationships.
Relationships. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm going to talk about relationships a little later. But good. Yeah, relationships help, definitely. Friendships, love, affection. It makes a difference. And, we can talk about that. Very good. Okay, what else? Health. Health, yeah. Health is important. Speaking about it as a doctor, she knows that health is important. It's important to help people sustain good health. And so something interesting though, yeah, okay, health makes a difference. There's something, okay, I'll talk about age, I'll talk about gender, I'll talk about health. Are younger people happier or older people? Older people. Yeah. Okay.
I think
I
it's
think young
a
people, right?
no, it's a curve where the really young people are super happy, old people are really happy when they have tips and
And it's kind of enter into work and mortgage and responsibilities. And, whoa, what happened to happen? But that's when you got married. I mean, you had relationships and you had kids, so then there was extra responsibility there as well. All right. Any other thoughts on this? Age? Are younger people or older people happier? Okay, so it depends on the circumstances.
And I guess their purpose in life directly affects you.
Okay, so we're coming to something important here. Purpose and meaning. Yeah, we can talk about that. Purpose and meaning is really important. So, in terms of research, age, it's younger people and older people are happy in different ways. ways. It's different types of happiness. Older people, their happiness is more kind of a satisfaction, a life lived, and lessons learned, contributions made. And for younger people, it's more external. The hope, the expectation of what may be, and the hope of having those experiences. But when you average it out, again, there's not much difference. It's just in different ways. And the same applies with gender. So is it a man's world or not? A woman's world, happy in different ways. So it turns out, according to the research, that women experience, on average, I mean, each and every one of us are individual. And this may not apply to us specifically, but on average, females experience higher highs of excitement and lower lows of disappointment. And males are kind of a bit more boring in between. Oh yeah, I'm really happy. I'm really excited about this. and the people are like, well, show it. You don't look excited. I'm not feeling your excitement. So it's just expressed and felt differently. But again, it averages out. So you can't say really that males or females are happier or sadder. It's just expressed in different ways, on average, different types. So women can get a higher experience of happiness and also lower lows on average. And then males kind of less of that fluctuation. So it turns out age, gender, what else would we put there? Money, wealth doesn't have that much effect. The calculation that scientists make is, you might be surprised. Okay, let's see. Out of what percentage would you give it? Based on what we discussed, like we're considering happiness as a pie. How much of our happiness? So many of you said it's an inner state. It's something inner. How much of it would be inner? How much of it would be circumstances? Zero. Well, you said money is important to a certain level, basic necessities.
I think it depends too on what the individual values, how much percentage they allow something to affect their happiness.
Yeah, good. So that's coming back to consciousness as well. But the figure that psychologists come to is an amazing 10%, a dismal 10%, considering how much energy we invest into changing our circumstances or improving our circumstances to be happier. In terms of a return on investment of resource, it's just 10%. And so one of the reasons for this is what is referred to as hedonic adaptation. Hedonic adaptation. This is a fancy phrase, which means that we it becomes a new normal. We adapt to our circumstances. Human beings are incredibly adaptable. We quickly adjust to our new situation. We make sense of it and we say, oh yeah, this is kind of all right. I am Yeah, whatever, smaller house, bigger house, we come, oh yeah, this is all right. So, however, whatever change we experience, we start to, reset, recalibrate mentally, physically, to adapt to that environment. We human beings are incredibly adaptable. Whereas plants will only grow in a certain environment, or animals will only grow in certain environments, human beings will figure out how to put clothes on, how to change the temperature or adjust the temperature so that they can continue to survive in a certain environment. So we adapt. We have this intelligence that we adapt to our situation. But then it becomes a problem for increasing happiness because we are adapt. So you win the lottery, right? Who's ever fantasized about winning the lottery? Yeah, okay. Most of us here, except Aditya and Emily, maybe. Even if I've never bought a lottery ticket, but I've still fantasized. What would I? You see the figure there. We read the news. Somebody won X millions of dollars. And wow, imagine what I would do. And you daydream progresses, unfolds. That much, I'll set my parents up. I'll do this for my siblings, and I'll donate this much to charity. And we start to allocate, and where we would move, and college fund for the kids. So winning a lottery should increase our happiness, although I think it's already told us it's not going to have that much impact. But why? Because of this problem, or it's not just a problem though, but because of this hedonic adaptation. So lottery winners, they've done research with it, follow-up studies, go and speak to lottery winners before, or not before, but just as they win the lottery, and then follow up a year, 2 years later, 3 years later, and check in. How are they doing? Get them to rate their happiness. And when researchers do this, they find that basically there was an initial excitement from winning the lottery, but after that it kind of just averages out again. They're not really any happier after winning the lottery. But after a few years, they're not happier than they were prior to winning the lottery. Sometimes they were soft because all their friends. Anyway, that's another story. We won't go there. Isn't that interesting, right? So hedonic adaptation kind of gets in the way of increasing happiness because we just adapt to the bigger house, the better car, the lottery win in our bank account. A lot of people actually can't sustain it in their bank account. They lose it quickly because they don't know how to take care of the money. All right, so then this is a problem. It's also an aid, though. It's also an aid. You mentioned health. So health is important. However, we also adapt to new circumstances as well after an injurious experience. So follow-up studies with people with spinal cord injuries. That means they're paralyzed from the neck down. And immediately after the accident, they're very distressed. They feel like their life is maybe not worth living anymore. They're questioning everything. Checking with them 2 years later, 3 years later, and pretty much they're as happy as they were before. Slight decrease, less mobility, and as we think about it now, we think, oh, but how could they adapt to that? How could we adapt to that? But the research says that they do, that we do. We adapt to that new situation. So hedonic adaptation, it hinders us being happier, but it also hinders us from being sadder as well. We kind of even kill overall throughout life. Overall, certainly there are periods where we're happier and sadder, but overall, hedonic adaptation means we're adapting and adjusting to our new circumstances. This led researchers to conclude, well, the pursuit of happiness is impossible. It's an impossible pursuit. It's bound to fail, so to speak. To be happier, you're going to be what you are. So then what is the basis for what you are? That's the next question then. And the answer is, from a psychological perspective, it's your genes, your genetic endowment. You're given a certain genetic endowment, and you have a certain personality, some more extroverted, some more introverted, some more people, some more they like to be alone, some they like to learn, some people get annoyed by new situations. So we have these different personality traits and characteristics. A trait, characteristic, a genetic trait and characteristic, it endures through life. Basically, the personality that we are born with overall holds throughout a lifetime. Those are certain trait characteristics that we have. They don't change. And so how is this researched? It's researched with twin studies. If I have a identical twin, like if I were Harry Potter, to give the example, it's a little bit dated. If I were Harry Potter and had a wand and I cast a spell and turned us all into identical twins, then I would be able to predict with 50% accuracy how happy Emily is based on how happy Tit is. I would be able to predict how happy Emily is based on how happy Aniruddha is. It's just, there's that, when we share, genetic traits. So I've already given the figure there. 10% circumstances, 50% genes. 50% genes. And so you might be asking, but how do you know it is the genes? Maybe it's some other variable with the upbringing, life circumstances. And so the way researchers have investigated this is twins raised apart, identical twins raised apart, and still their personality is on average similar by 50%. If twin A is depressed, twin B, there's a 50% probability twin B is depressed as well. If twin A is happy, twin B. And so twins, identical twins raised apart, some of these studies, if you have a little time, do a Google search. They are quite entertaining. Two twins, so raised apart means they're separated at birth. They are adopted, raised in families in entirely different locations. And, but then somehow they meet, maybe researchers connect them, or someone in the community says, hey, you look so similar to someone I know. And then they connect them and they find out that they're actually siblings. And then they discuss and they find out that they drive the same blue colored Chevrolet. They are both married. These are some of the strange coincidental studies. They're both married to, males married to someone named Betty. They've both named their sons Alan. They both divorced and were previously married to Julie. They both work in the fire department, and that's actually how they were connected, because a colleague working in the fire department said, "Hey, you look so similar to someone else in another fire department that I was in training with. Actually, you're almost like the same. It's like your brothers or something." So then they connect and they find out, yeah, they are twins, identical twins that were separated and raised apart. And so the commonalities are uncanny. And so this, based on these studies, psychologists conclude that our personality is 50% informed by our genes.
That's it.
It is, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I got very different from my sister.
Uh-huh.
We're not twins, but she's a lot different than me.
Right. Yeah.
Brought up in the same household.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So we share some genetic
Yeah.
um,
She was a happy baby, I was more serious.
right,
Very different.
right. Yeah, yeah. But identical twins have exactly the same DNA. Yeah, the X splits basically. But born from the same egg. So they have the same composition there. Okay, so the thing with genetic, we can't change that. So we've discussed circumstances and we've said change there is only going to have minimal return, 10%. Genes, that accounts for 50% of our happiness experience that informs our personality. You can't change those. The good news is we're left with 40%, right? We're left with 40%. And what is that 40% component? Yeah. Yeah. So the surroundings will be circumstances. The 40% that we're left with is what the yoga tradition really emphasizes, and that is consciousness. Consciousness. So genes, they have an influence, circumstances has some influence, it's minimal. The yoga tradition says, don't put all your energy into the circumstances, they're changing all the time. Focus on consciousness. It's your intentional activities. It's your intentional thoughts. It's your intentional routines that can change your perception and your experience of the world, your experience of yourself. And so that's where the yoga tradition is encouraging us to invest the greater portion of our attention and resources. Time being the resource, the resource of our mental energy as well. So let's consider that then. The consciousness, mindset, but behaviors as well. So in terms of behavior, one thing that we can do consciously, and that the Bhagavad Gita very much encourages, is you were saying comfort with yourself. You also mentioned comfort with yourself. Understand yourself. In terms of your psychological predisposition, genetic endowment, what kind of person am I? What type of man am I? What type of woman am I? What type of human being am I? What are my gifts? What are my talents? What are my skills? What's my nature? The Bhagavad Gita describes as a generalization 4 personality types. A scholar, priest, intellectual, that's one. An administrator, organizer, coordinator, leader as another. I'm giving different So that's two so far. The other is the entrepreneur. Someone engaged in enterprise, generating resources. That's what drives them, inspires them, motivates them. That's what they're oriented towards. And then the third is the doer, the accomplisher, the craftsperson who can make amazing things, get things done, practical things. And so the Bhagavad Gita describes these four different types of personality. In the story of the Bhagavad Gita, the protagonist is Arjuna. He's a warrior. And he's faced with a battle. He gives some philosophical reasons why he should leave, why he shouldn't engage in the battle, and why basically he wants to become like a priest, a monk. And so Krishna is telling him, you are a warrior. You need to embrace that nature that is yours, not walk away from it. You're not going to be able to sustain being a priest who lives by begging, a monk that goes around with the begging bowl. You are a warrior. You're a prince. You are an organizer. You are someone who ensures that there's justice. You're ready to fight for a cause, to establish order in society. You're not going to be able to do the monk thing. You're going to become a warrior again, but then you'll be, breaking your monk vows. So, so better you embrace your nature and you engage that as a duty. So that's one principle: understanding yourself, some self-knowledge, some self-understanding, and engaging that, applying that, whatever it is, whatever your talent, whatever your skill, whatever your gift, being curious about that, cultivating it, and then making it your service offering. So that's one strategy that's encouraged in the Bhagavad Gita, because our natures will be expressed, but they might be expressed in a degrading way or an uplifting way. They can be expressed with ego and pride, or they can be expressed with service, an attitude of service. The warrior or administrator can be, it's their inclination to do it. They can be doing it with ego, or they can be embracing that nature as a service offering. The teacher can be teaching, researching for ego, or they can be doing that as service. Similarly with the entrepreneur, they can be making money, and they can be cheating and lying, or they can be doing that as a service to the community, that they're providing needed products and services, and they see that as an offering. They're providing employment, they're providing revenue for taxes and charity. And so understanding our nature and engaging that is a powerful strategy for sustained happiness, than doing it as a service offering. Yeah, did you have a comment? Yes.
But like I feel with all things, right? Like the teacher, the athlete,
Yeah.
But most of like a combination of each, right? Like it might be like more leaning towards more in one aspect, it's kind of a combination.
Sure.
How you kind of
Yeah, you don't have to fit into a neat compartment box. It's just about understanding yourself and engaging that as your gift. So yeah, so if you're the priest warrior, that might have its place as well. If you're the entrepreneur administrator, we will be combinations. It's more the principle, understanding who you are and embracing that and making that your service offering. Good, yeah, good question, good reflection. It's important to clarify that. Any other thoughts on this? Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a question from this was from one of your initial comments of strategies for happiness.
Yeah.
I was confused where it seemed like we talked about happiness being a natural state. And the fact that we need strategies to be happy makes it something you need to attain or something you need to achieve.
Yeah.
And would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's
paradox.
a great question. Yeah, a little paradox. Okay. So the yoga tradition teaches that we are by nature Atman, we're soul. And the nature of the soul of Atman is to be happy, full of love, full of wisdom, Satchit Ananda. Yeah, that is our nature. But then we are in bodies, and the body has a certain genetic endowment. The body is in a certain circumstance. And so that's our conditioning. It's the covering over Atman. And so we're working with that. We're working with that covering. And so in terms of engaging the nature, embracing and engaging as a service offering, that's a way of purifying the conditioning over Atman and letting Atman become more prominent. Great question. Yeah. So it is a process. Even though happiness is our nature, it's still a process to become unconditioned in terms of our material coverings, material identification. Okay, so I've spoken about engagement. There's consciousness is also about the mind, controlling the mind, yeah? The Bhagavad Gita says, if you can make your mind your friend, then you'll be happy. That's the yogi makes the mind a friend. And if you cannot make your mind your friend, it can be a saboteur. So the mind can engage in self-sabotage. The mind can be undermining you all the time. You might be, tell me if this resonates, yeah? You're engaging in different activities and your mind is saying, that was dumb, that was stupid, you're not good enough for that. So the mind is always engaged in this chatter and it's undermining us, criticizing us all the time. And you might be even repeating that chatter given by the mind and say, oh yeah, I'm dumb, I'm stupid. And so the mind, the undisciplined mind, can be really problematic. And so in yoga, a lot of emphasis is given to giving direction to the mind. There's this understanding that the mind is not us. Atman and the mind is separate. But if the mind is in control, Atman may be lost, or we're not connected with Atman. We're just identifying with that chattering mind that's flickering. But if Atman is made strong, and then the mind can be given direction. And so some of the ways of doing this are by disciplining the mind in meditation. Telling the mind to sit and be present and try it, right? Meditate, the mind will disappear. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, when the mind wanders, bring it back. He doesn't say, if the mind wanders, it's going to wander. He says, when it wanders, bring it back. And the more we become disciplined in this, the mind becomes less inclined to wander and more inclined to stay with us. And so we start to get some control over the mind, and then we can direct the mind according to wisdom. We can give the mind wisdom and direct the mind. Yes?
We make the distinction if we're being guided by the Atma or the mind.
Yeah. Good question. So in the yoga tradition, then we are given teachings. So there are teachings given by the gurus, given by the rishis, and they give us that higher wisdom that's been transferred or disseminated in a line of teachers. And when our mind becomes inclined or aligned with those teachings and practices, then and that becomes the inclination of the mind, then we have a sense that the mind is being guided by Atman. But when the mind is adverse to that, and the inclination of the mind is towards those things that the yoga tradition or teachings are saying are not healthy, then we have a sense that the mind is in control. Does it make sense? Yeah. So there are some practical mindsets. One thing is to be aware of our language. If we say, I hate this, and I hate that, and I hate him or her, we can check ourselves, because the yogi doesn't hate anyone or anything. So we can be conscious of our language. And that's one way of disciplining the mind. The yogi doesn't hate. And when we say, I'm an idiot, I failed my driving test, I failed my exam, or I'm a fool. I'm not an idiot, I'm a soul. So being conscious of this language, of the chatter of the mind, and challenging it, questioning it, and basically retraining. You can retrain your mind. That's what yoga is. We retrain the mind. So it's less inclined to come with those types of explanations or comments or observations. If you catch your mind every time it says, I hate, or is offensive to oneself, then it becomes less and less frequent. I failed the exam not because I'm an idiot, but because did I study? Did I really put the study in? So there's an alternative explanation, right? A much more helpful explanation, because there's something I can do with it. Okay, I'm going to retake the exam and I'm going to prepare. I flopped in that presentation. I just didn't prepare. Not because I'm an idiot, I just didn't prepare. So that's much more helpful as an explanation, as opposed to just an idiot. So catching that languaging is another way we can discipline the mind. There's some other mindsets that we can adopt. And one is very, very powerful, and that is gratitude or appreciation. I noticed when I came in here, this card on each of your seats. And it says wisdom, compassion, humility, kindness, forgiveness, even-mindedness, simplicity, detachment, devotion. So I'm not sure where the list came from, but it's a beautiful list. These are yogi qualities, yogi mindsets. So gratitude could have been here as well. When we are grateful, we are appreciating the blessings we have been given. Like engaging the nature, being comfortable with yourself, engaging that nature as a blessing, as a service contribution. So gratitude is to appreciate the gifts that I've been given, to feel thankful for it. I am grateful for the opportunity to be with you. I'm grateful for this opportunity to share with you and reflect with you on happiness. I'm grateful for your comments and reflections, because I'm also learning as I'm sharing And so there are so many things every day that we can be grateful for that we just ignore, don't take time to acknowledge. But if we just pause for a second to appreciate those plants over there, the clean environment that we're in, nice room with nice people, to appreciate that we're alive, to appreciate that we have health, to appreciate the relationships we have. If we take time to just pause and appreciate or be grateful, we're filled with happiness. And we can do that all the time because we have so much more to be grateful for than not. But what the mind does, it goes to something that we don't have, that we wish we had, and then we get disappointed that we don't have it. Instead of being grateful for the gifts that are abundant in our lives, our mind goes to, oh, I wish I had that Tesla car. Looks so much better. Or the new computer, the new MacBook Air that hasn't been released yet. I wish I had that. Not even released yet. I wish I had it. Without it, I'm quite inhibited. But when I had it, I'll be so much better off. Life will be so much better. And so we go towards hankering for what we don't have, rather than appreciating what we do have. And the other thing we do, that the mind does, is it goes to the past. Oh, before I had this, and I don't anymore. So there's, or I should have done this, or I should have done the other thing, or I should have bought this, or I should have said yes to the other thing, or that opportunity that I missed. So the mind is stuck in the past, or it's lamenting for the past or hankering for the future. And gratitude, the yogi is in the present. And the yogi is grateful in the present moment. The yogi has aspirations as we advance in awakening Atman, revealing Atman. But so gratitude is the mindset that can be cultivated, practice. The more you practice it, the more it will become your inclination. And so for a long time, I had a routine in the morning when I would wake up, I'd be grateful to be alive. And I would go into as I'm getting ready for my activities, I would think of my parents and be grateful. I would think of my teachers and be grateful. I would think of my colleagues and be grateful. I would think of my work and be grateful. I would think of where I live and be grateful. And I would just thank you and thank you and thank you. And I'm so grateful. And I would say, I'm so grateful for so-and-so, and I'm so grateful for this, and I'm so grateful verbally as like a mantra. And then what I found was, as I came down the stairs out of my apartment, someone said, hello! I would be so grateful to see my neighbor. And as I would come onto the street, I'd be grateful to see the trees, and be grateful for the day, whether it was sunny or rainy. This is something to appreciate in each. And so it's about retraining the mind and cultivate, as a choice, an appreciative, grateful mindset. And then another nice one that's here, I mean, these are all beautiful. Forgiveness. If the mind is stuck in the past, regretting or maybe carrying some anger and some negative feeling towards others, then and we might think that it's important we hold to that anger, because we hold to it, that's our way of getting back the other person, punishing them or showing them how much they hurt us. So we hold to the anger. We just hold it for weeks and months and years, and we're angry, and we're not forgiving them, we're teaching them a lesson by giving them the cold shoulder and talking badly about them or whatever. And the reality is that other person doesn't even know you're angry, didn't realize they offended you. That's another issue. But they're not being hurt by you, basically we hurt ourselves. And the negative thoughts are creating the toxin in our body, the toxicity in our body. We're stuck in the past. And I want you all to think of a lemon. What does that have to do with anything? Think of a lemon, a yellow, so big, juicy lemon. And squash the lemon in your mind. And tell me what's happening in your mouth. Somebody? Tiny feeling in your mouth, right? Tiny feeling like sourness, and maybe some saliva has been produced. And what was that? It was just a thought. I said lemon. And I said, juicy. And your body reacted by producing a tangy feeling and generating saliva. So our thoughts are having a physical, biological reaction in our bodies. And if we're thinking, I'm angry, and I hate, and I'm going to punish, and our muscles are all tense, and our adrenaline is activated because we're in defense mode. We're in fight mode. And because of that, we're not sleeping, we're not digesting, we are stressed and depleting our physical resources. We're high strung. And that leads, ongoingly, it leads to burnout and depression. Our thoughts are having a physiological effect in our bodies. And think gratitude. Do it, and your mind will, your body will relax. And think forgiveness. Let go of that anger. And maybe we need some help to work through it. Some coaching, some counseling. But work through it. Let go of the anger and the resentment for yourself. Forgive. You forgive them, you actually benefit yourself. Another really important one here, I mean, they're also wonderful. Compassion. Yeah. Compassion. Compassion is when we're giving to others. When we are in a place of abundance, of gratitude, then our hearts can open out to others as well. And that is to recognize others when they are in difficulty. A friend, a colleague, a family member, or someone we don't know, a stranger. To notice the signs of their struggle or pain. Maybe it's when a friend says, I hate you. And rather than being offended, say, you okay? Everything all right? Must be having a hard day, tell me what's going on. Yeah, so listening through the language to hear the pain actually that's there in a soul that's actually crying out for love. Noticing the pain in that language rather than being offended by it, the yogis. Empathizing. So noticing the pain, empathizing with it, and then responding, finding some way to help alleviate that struggle. So these are all qualities and dispositions that can be cultivated practically. Having a routine is helpful. And So elevating consciousness, coming with conscious people, coming into Sangha or community with conscious people. And I've spoken about engaging your nature. I've spoken about the language. I've spoken about these positive attitudes that can be cultivated. All of this can be brought together in the last word here, that is devotion or bhakti. They can be all done as an offering of love or of service. So the interesting thing about compassion, of all the happiness techniques or strategies, thank you for catching me on that language. Of all the happiness strategies, I studied happiness when I was studying psychology. And from all of it, I understood that compassion actually is the most powerful and profound. And it really is a paradox because you're leaning into pain and suffering and you're extending yourself from it. Here's the paradox though, if you do it because you know it's going to make you happy, it doesn't have the same effect. But if you do it from a genuine place of care and love and compassion, springing from your own gratitude and appreciation and your own deeper inner sense of self, comfort with self, then what's given back is so much more. You can't fake it though, you can't trick it. It needs to be a genuine outpouring that comes from a personal cultivation of wisdom and humility and forgiveness and gratitude. And so that, yeah.
Doesn't it all come down though to relationships?
Yeah, good. So there's relationships were mentioned earlier as well. So, and I said I would come to it. The interesting thing about relationships and these qualities that I'm describing is that people, the research suggests that people with these qualities have better relationships. So whether it's, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, they go hand in hand actually. And some of that research involved some nuns. So yeah, what nuns? Are nuns in relationships? Yeah, with self, with each other. Yeah. These were, so they looked at essays, valedictory essays written by nuns, and they analyzed them as a content analysis for language. And they followed up because it was there in a record. They had the essay, so they did a content analysis on it, and they basically analyzed them for positive and negative language. They're looking for language of compassion and gratitude and blessedness and forgiveness, as opposed to a negative language. And they followed up with these nuns, and they found that those with the most positive language and the mindset, they were they lived longer, they were in better health. And similarly with relationships, there have been similar studies. They look at graduation photographs, and those with the more genuine smiles in their graduation. So there's a duhende, which is referred to as an authentic smile, and then there's a fake airline smile, like we're on the job smile. And they analyzed these graduation photographs for the authentic versus the on the job smile, and they found those with the more authentic smile were also had more fulfilling relationships as well decades later. So there is a recursiveness to this. Relationships and these qualities, they go hand in hand. Cultivate these qualities, you'll become, cultivate these qualities, then you'll be more appreciative about this, others will be more appreciative of you, and build stronger relationships. So, and the point of service, devotion and service as an offering, compassion as an offering. So it is extending out from oneself to others. Absolutely, thank you for raising that. Really important. And in bhakti, we see all of this as an offering to the divine, because every being, every atman is part of the divine. And so we're not separating our spiritual life from actually being in the world and appreciating and loving and serving and respecting others as service to the divine. And that's the beautiful bhakti teaching. And so even for Arjuna, the warrior, who wanted to be a monk for a short period of time when he had an existential crisis, he was told, no, you do your duty as a warrior, as a service of love, actually, a love offering of bhakti, of devotion. So there we are. We are at time. Thank you so much for your comments and questions and reflections. It's been an absolute pleasure to engage with you today. And did I keep my commitments to you? I said you would get some practical tools. Yes? Yes. Yeah, right. Okay. I said even in the conversation, there might be a shift and you might be transformed, contributing to a more happy disposition. So hopefully I've kept that for all of you. You've all experienced that, and that's been my focus. I also feel that I've been gifted in sharing this. I get more insight and ultimately to recommit to what I've learned and received as well. So kirtan is a wonderful practice for cultivating higher consciousness, to freeing the mind, controlling the mind, disciplining the mind, making the mind a friend. You can chant with an attitude of gratitude or a great attitude. We can chant in kirtan with a sense of detachment, but also of love and devotion. So, and we can also chant with compassion. We can send out the blessings and the beauty and the joyfulness of kirtan to others as well. So we'll sing Maha Mantra. And is that where we were supposed to be, or right? Yeah, okay, great. So we'll sing the Maha Mantra. And so I think we all know the Maha Mantra that we're going to sing. Hare Krishna. Repeat after me. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare. There are lots of different chants we sing. This is called the Maha Mantra. Our teachers in the Bhakti tradition, they emphasize this as the great chant for connecting with the divine and awakening higher spiritual consciousness. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Let's sing one more time. We can all raise our arms there to open our hearts up like lotus flowers and feel the gratitude. Let's be grateful for where we are together singing this wonderful mantra engaged in kirtan. Hare Krishna, Let's do that one more time, and this time we can add kindness and compassion. We can share the love that we're feeling, the joy that we're feeling, grateful for, we can share. So let's raise our arms again one more time and send out a blessing to your family, your friends, your loved ones, and just send it out to the world. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Thank you all so much. Big round of applause to Shri Prahlada. Inspiring class and discussion that we had. I know for myself, I hope everyone feels the same way, but I really feel like I have practical points that I can take away from with me and into my life to help me have gratitude, have positive thinking, have happiness by the way that I'm perceiving the world, interacting with the world, and being grateful for the world. And everything that people added to the conversation is so enriching. So I'm so grateful to all of you for coming and being here today. We hope to provide come back again and again and speak to us. And now everyone can stay. We have a wonderful lunch prepared for you. And we will share. You can just, they bring these things to the elevator, correct?
We'll bring the green cushions, the blankets, and these to the elevator room, and then leave the chairs.
Help us do that. We would be so grateful. Thank you. I'm back. This is